this sense of being loved. Where I was, I felt loved and accepted, and I'd never felt loved and accepted anywhere on the planet at all. I never had that. I was brought up in a dysfunctional family where there was alcohol, there was drugs, there was violence, there was hunger. I hadn't really experienced that. I know my mum loved me, and I speak to her today, and we get on very well, and I know she loves me, but we only had what we had at that time. And where I was caught up in fear and anxiety as a child, I was always on tender hooks and scared and fearful, and I never had only, experiencing what I experienced. I felt this like universal energy of love. And I know now when I do my channeling, when I tune in to light council angels and everything else, I actually have felt the same feeling that I felt the day that I died in that place that I was in.
I just finished talking to Anne Bayford. Wow, what a great conversation. She's a holistic intuitive therapist and so much more, which you'll find out about. Her stories are unbelievable. And she also gives us strategies on how to navigate fear and stress and anxiety and just be better in our own skin. So here you go. Let's just jump right into Anne Bayford. Anne, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to FEAR Unzipped. And you know that you are an important part of why this podcast even came to be. Or maybe you don't know, but we can talk about that later. But I wanted to really dive into you. This is a podcast about why are we fearful? Why do we stress? Why are we anxious? Certainly, I have experienced all of those things and continue to experience some of those things. And I'd like to just hear your experiences because you have such an incredible background. You are, I could take the whole podcast and just list your credentials. So we won't do that. But you are a holistic intuitive therapist.
Yeah.
You are a past life practitioner. You're a psychic medium.
Yep.
You also consult, I think, at the School of Psychic School in London.
College of Psychic Studies. Yeah.
Very, very renowned school.
Yeah.
You've had near-death experiences. So, you really are the full meal deal, I think, as we would say in the States. So can we just jump right in with you? And can you tell us what your life was like before you got into all these different modalities and then how it happened? Because I think it's an incredible story.
Lovely. Thank you. Absolutely a pleasure to be here. It's so important. I know when we spoke about this before, but yeah, I think it's so important, and people really need to know this right now. If you look at humanity and what's going on around the world, I think people need to have some sort of sense of something to rely on or something to fall back on, or to know that they have their own strength to empower them individually. And that's what I do with clients and students, sort of teaching them to empower themselves and giving them the tools. What was life like originally?
Yeah.
So let's look at it. If I go back, a shorter version, I think, my mum was married 3 times, and a lot of her relationships that she had, she tried her best, bless her, and she did. And I'm a mother, so I know what it's like, but she tried her best, and she was married 3 times. And each of those fathers, should we say that it's quite dysfunctional family I was brought up in. So we literally... my original dad had death when I was 2, and that has had a real impact in the whole of my life, even as an adult, entering into relationships myself and understanding now as a counselor therapist why I entered into, my long-term relationship and what happened there, because I'd also entered into a dysfunctional relationship. So going back, it was a child feeling very fearful. We had no money. We went from having loads of money and eating and everything else. And you take that for granted when you've got money, and then going really onto the breadline. And we really had nothing at all. And being a child that would go into bed, we would literally put spare mats or carpets over our blankets, and then coats as well on top of them, and fully dressed, because fully clothed, because we had no central heating. It was cold time. It was scary. We had in the UK, we called it a slot meter, where you'd put 50p in, the gas or the electricity. And if you didn't have the money, you had no lights, no heating, or no heat, nothing at all. And there were moments where we literally would go to the supermarket and pick up the cans on the supermarket shelf that had no labels on. So we had to take a guesswork whether it was going to be for us or the dogs that we kept. We didn't know what the product was in the tin, but my mum was really, really poor. And, we'd go to the local bakery, and they'd have the black bags outside the shops, chucking away their bread. There were no food banks back then. And we would literally, I remember as a child going down the black bag and finding bread to eat. So, having all that growing up. And then again, she remarried. We had lots of money, surplus of cash, and you took it for granted. And again, she got divorced. And there was a lot of violence in the relationship. We were aware that, one of my dads was an alcoholic, and he would beat her up, and he would actually then beat me up. So it was quite a violent background. There was a lot going on. So when I met my partner, who was very from a different background, I didn't know much about him, and I entered into a loving relationship initially, and then it just became quite toxic. And I have my own children. I wouldn't say it was him individually, because I have to take responsibility of entering into that relationship too. But if you come from a certain background, you only expect certain things. And then as you grow and you expand, as I became a counsellor, I started to see actually it was a bit dysfunctional, it was a bit toxic. And then I left recently. So, yeah.
I'm just curious, with that pretty intense upbringing that you had, would you change it, or do you think it created the person you are today?
Oh, definitely create the person I am today. I have a very strong willpower. It's from what I've gone through, even having my children, having postnatal depression, having 5 miscarriages. I then later went on to become a breastfeeding counsellor to support other women. That's the whole reason I got into counselling, because then I wanted to give back to other individuals, because I'd been through it myself. So I never see it as, woe is me. At the time, when you don't have a greater understanding, you're wondering why this is happening to you. But when I reflect back, and now, when I sit with my clients or my students, I look at it as this: there is a greater force in us. These are like how they are really our lessons. It's not that we're being punished. It's literally showing us actually how strong we really are. But sometimes we get caught up in the whole part of it, of feeling that we can't get out of it, but we can. So no, I would never, no way, I wouldn't turn back the clock. I can die 4 times and come back. It's absolutely fine.
Which you've done. Yeah, I think those experiences, I think that's why you're probably an incredible therapist, or you are an incredible therapist, because you can relate to any situation with anybody talking to you. You've experienced it. Plus you're incredibly intuitive, and you channel, and you just have a wealth of knowledge in you. So after all that happened, then how did the psychic medium channeling thing show up in your life?
Right. Okay. Good question. I mean, from a very young age, I'd heard voices, and I didn't understand what they were. And I remember being told by my mother, like, don't tell people that you can hear voices. They're going to think you're crazy and lock you up. And I didn't know at that particular time. I only found out recently that actually my grandfather heard voices. He was quite psychic, which I wasn't told until recently, on my mother's side. And his sister was a medium, which I didn't know till recently. And then on my father's side, my biological father, also, he's very intuitive, and his mother was a medium, and I didn't know this. So both bloodlines. But as a child growing up, I would see images, I would hear sounds, I would communicate with animals. Thought it was quite normal to hear animals speak, and until later on I found out actually it's not normal at all. But until I was told, and this is the thing, until we're told something, you know, children, they see the magic in life. They're very intuitive, and it's only as they, you know, from other people around them, what they're told they can't do, what they can't achieve, and that's where they get stuck in. So, growing up, I found it quite difficult. I felt that I was the child on the outside, observing others at school. I didn't fit in. I was the weird child. I was very sensitive. I could feel, you know, I mean, now we'd call them empathic, intuitive individuals. I could sense when there was sadness or people were feeling, you know, unwell. I could feel that. I could also, I would say to my mum, I think this person's going to pass over soon. They're going to die. And I'd get shouted at, so don't say that. And it was only literally having my first near-death experience around about 37, when my children were 5 and 7 years old, when I actually got knocked down by the van as I was crossing the traffic, you know, on the pedestrian crossing. It was only then that really I was woken up, because I didn't believe in near-death experiences. You know, I'm one of those annoying children, and I'm still one of those annoying adults that until I can prove it, I don't believe it, because I have a science background, a science mind. So I didn't believe it, but it was literally the first near-death experience of me stepping out of my body and seeing something else. And then I was led to believe, oh, there's more to life than what we see.
So I can completely relate to that. I have a science, I'm kind of grounded in science too, so I have to see it to believe it. But I've seen so much now that I really, really believe it. And I know you do too. So when the van hit you, what happened to you?
Okay, so it was the day when I left the office and I was thinking about going to pick the children up from, you know, school. I'd left the children in the morning. I was in a hurry, didn't kiss them goodbye or anything. And looking back at it now, you know, it still affects me today, even though, you know, they're now 28 and 30 years old. They're adults and we talk about it. And, you know, but there's always a part of us that, you know, we're processing things. And literally before I got to the crossing, the pedestrian crossing, you know, I think it was 4 or 5 other individuals by me, pressed the button to make it stop all the traffic. And I could hear a voice, and it was something like my nan's voice. My nan had passed away when I was very young, but I always sort of thought, well, she's always around me, but I couldn't explain. And then, you know, the other people that were crossing, they had crossed, and I was unaware of that at the time. And then I had a voice saying everything's going to be okay. And I couldn't understand why I had that voice. So I looked around me just to check on traffic. And I already started feeling a bit warm, and I couldn't understand what was going on because it was, you know, March. It was cold in London. I was, you know, heavy coat and everything. And I never felt the van hitting me. I was in my head, as we all are, and I was thinking, I need to go and get the newspaper. I need to post this letter before I get on the train to see the children. And I was told, you know, I had this voice, and it was my nan's voice, which I couldn't make sense of at the time. And I heard her voice sort of say, no, you know, go and get the newspaper, which meant I changed direction. And when I changed direction, it changed everything. By changing direction, the van hit me on my left-hand side, and I sort of flew across the ground, hit the ground. If I'd gone straight across to post the letter, the police later said that your head, you know, your neck would have been severed. You would have gone through the front screen. But I didn't feel any of this at all. And I'd hit the ground, and I didn't know that. But all I know is I felt very warm. There was a bright light around me, and I felt very safe. Somebody had told my partner, who worked nearby, he had come walking down, sort of power walking down the road to see what was going on. Now I could see this, but not from my physical body that was actually dead. I was told I had, my heart had stopped for about 7 minutes. So I could see this individual walking down the road. I knew him, but didn't know why he was so stressed and why he was walking down the road so fast. So I had no emotional, sensational feeling from where I was, but I was looking down at everything that was going on. There was crowds of people. I could hear an ambulance come in. I could hear a paramedic on his motorbike, the sirens. I could hear all that, and I sensed the crowd, how they were feeling. They were panicking. I heard someone shout and say, "Let me get a towel for her, put it under her head." I later found out that was the hairdresser. There was lots of people looking on, spectators, but I was not physically there. Even though my physical body was there, I couldn't feel that. And where I was, it just felt very bright white light, and I felt at home and I felt safe. A part of me had then popped off into a lorry. The driver there was moaning and saying he got stuck in traffic. Some woman has stepped out in front of a van, and I could hear him. And I remember feeling, I feel a bit puzzled, because how comes I'm hearing his conversation? I'm in his cabin of this lorry. And then I didn't understand. I was like moving around and I just didn't understand. And I remember that it was only when my partner had placed his hand on my physical body that I didn't see it initially, but I felt his feelings, and I heard his voice like telepathically going, "What am I going to do? How am I going to look after Rebecca and Nathan?" And I remember sensing it, and I was somewhere else. And I just remember feeling what it was feeling. And then it hit me that, oh my God, that's me. And then there was part of me that rushed back to the body, but I hadn't entered into the body, but I'd rushed back, but I could feel it. So the senses, all our senses were going crazy. And then where I was, in this white light, this area, I remember, I didn't know what it was called at that time. I just remembered feeling that there were lots of books, there was information, there was like digital, virtual information. There was lots of information being held about everyone in the universe. And I didn't believe any of this before I got knocked down. But I had individuals talking to me. They were, I want to say beings, because they did not look like humans at all. But the information was given to me, and I sort of had almost like a download of information, like why I was here on the planet, what I was doing, what I was going to go on to do. And I remember kept on thinking, I mustn't forget this information. I mustn't forget this information. But I had no pain. I was out of my body. I was detached from my body. So yeah, it was very calming. But a huge download of information that I'd never had before the accident. And then it was only when the paramedic and the ambulance arrived, they cut my clothes off and paddled my chest, my heart, and then like electrocuted my heart to stimulate for me to come back. And then I started feeling the pain, and then I whizzed back into my body. I could feel me being pulled, dragged back into my physical form. But I never would have believed this before that day.
So did you enter the Akashic Records? Is that what you think that's where you were?
Yeah. I now know it was the Akashic Records. And then now that's why I then go on to work with the Akashic Records and Light Council as well.
And then did you want to come back, or were you thinking, this is too wonderful here, I really don't want to come back?
I didn't want to come back, because it's only now through the work that I do, I understand it more. It's this sense of being loved. Where I was, I felt loved and accepted, and I'd never felt loved and accepted anywhere on the planet at all. I never had that. I was brought up in a dysfunctional family where there was alcohol, there was drugs, there was violence, there was hunger. But I hadn't really experienced that. I know my mum loved me, and I speak to her today, and we get on very well, and I know she loves me, but we only had what we had at that time. And where I was caught up in fear and anxiety as a child, I was always on tender hooks and scared and fearful. And it was only, experiencing my experience, I felt this like universal energy of love. And I know now when I do my channeling, when I tune in to Light Council, angels, and everything else, I actually have felt the same feeling that I felt the day that I died, in that place that I was in. And I'm aware of it now, that there's like a frequency of love energy that we can reach that place. We then can accomplish anything. So I know that might sound a bit bizarre, but that's what I teach.
It's not bizarre at all to me, because so the whole time you're telling that story, I just had chills going throughout my body. And whenever I get information coming in or something that's on a higher frequency, sometimes I feel like I have to put on like a down parka. I just start shivering a lot. And then sometimes I'll start sweating. It's just such a strange phenomenon that happens to me. But I had so many chills listening to that story. I could feel it. And I know that feeling of, I get it every once in a while, this a pure joy, a pure, like it's not the joy that we talk about on this planet, but it goes beyond that. And it can be a split second, and it can fulfill you for days and days and days. And so that's what I'm trying to do here with Fear Unzipped, is to show, yes, we can be in states of stress and anxiety, but there are moments where we can actually feel that kind of pure love, and that we are always loved.
Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit about the people that were talking to you, or your guides, or when you channel? How do you know that you're not making that up,
I love
and
that.
that's real?
I love that. I just want to go back one moment, because it's
Yes.
something that, you know, when I teach my students or when I with my clients, sometimes we feel that, you know, I have lots of people sort of saying, oh, but you can talk to angels, or you can talk to light council, or you can do this and you can do that. You know, I can't do that. I can't meditate. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I always say to them, actually, if we learn from children, they are seeing and feeling, they're in that moment from a very, very young age. And it's only through what they're taught or told. This is where the, you know, those beliefs come in, you know, our core values and beliefs. Before the age of 7, they start coming in, and how the brain functions. It doesn't have the ability before the age of 7 to make its own decisions. And so with children, if we watch children, how they play, how they have these imaginary friends, how, you know, they see life, you know, they look up when they're walking around the city and see the beautiful buildings, and they'll see those gargoyles on, you know, historical buildings. You know, they'll go out and they'll walk in nature, and they're having fun blowing those flowers and watching butterflies. I say this to my clients. I was doing this morning, and I was walking. I've moved out of London, and I've moved out into the countryside, and I've gone back into the countryside. And just being in those moments, you know, I heard the cows this morning, I heard the horses and the smell. We have all our senses. That's why we're equipped with our senses, so that we can reprogram what's happened to us, and so that we can keep absorbing beauty. So, you know, when people sort of say to me that, you know, they find it hard to connect meditation, you can do that. You know, I'm a mindfulness coach. You can do that by being even in nature, or something you find that you enjoy. And those are those exhilarating enlightenment moments. So even if someone, you know, they like reading a book, or they communicate with friends, it's to bottle that. It's to go into that moment and go, oh. And, you know, I say to my clients and students, before I go to bed, I do the same thing, because what I do is, before I go to bed, I find 5 things throughout the day that I've really enjoyed and I've loved, and I absorb it, and I hold on to the information, and I allow my body to re-feel it again, because it's reprogramming the neuroscience within our brain, instead of worry. Because if we go to bed and we worry, our mind is geared up to solve issues and problems, and that's why we have certain dreams. Whereas if we go to bed and we say to ourselves, of what beautiful experiences we've had, and hold on to those emotions, or those smells, or the sounds, which we are a sensory being, we can create changes and be more childlike. So we can change things. We don't have to be the same. We can, our physical body, we can make those changes.
You know, my life changed when I heard about neuroplasticity, and that our brain can change, that we can rewire our brain, and then learning about our thoughts. So if the brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy, why not say something nice to yourself, rather than saying, oh God, how stupid that I did that. We've just been programmed for so long, I think, to kind of go down a negative path. And so it does take a while. This doesn't happen overnight, to, you know, be happy and joyful and think positive thoughts. It really requires a rewiring. But I love what you said about going to bed. Nature does this. You know, I'm out in nature a lot, and I see in your Instagram posts that you're out in nature a lot. And they're so beautiful, Anne. Is there anything else that happened? I know you had that near-death experience. Then wasn't there another one that happened?
Yeah, there were. I mean, you know, the reason why I do mention about the neuroplasticity, because literally I had, you know, after the death experience, the first one, the road traffic accident, I was unable to walk for 4 years, unaided. I was in a wheelchair for 2 years, a further 2 years with a walking stick. And I was told I'd never walk again. They would amputate my foot, my leg. And it was literally, reading up about Dr. Jody Spencer, watching his information, that made me learn that actually because of his injury, that, with spinal injury, I had to do it for myself. So I literally worked with my brain, thinking of rewiring and looking at how it was to walk again. So, there's a lot of science behind this. Whereas if you go into the mind and it's like muscle memory, that imagining myself walking again, that I actually was firing off the information to my muscles and the nerve endings and everything else. It was helping my body to heal. We have that ability. And sometimes we have that taken away from us because we think that we should just rely on medical side of things, doctors and everything else. Now, I've worked in a hospital, so I'm not saying, that we shouldn't rely on them as well, but we have to also be able to empower ourselves and learn. Actually, our body has everything it needs to heal. And, you were saying about our mindset, positive and negative and happy and sad or whatever. It's just relearning that, when we are going for a negative or what we feel has been a negative situation. And I remember as a child, my nan had she'd been brought up in the war. So during the war, when things weren't right, to keep yourself going, it's like, well, let's cheer ourselves up. Let's find some positives or things that they wouldn't have called it positive things back then. But let's rally around. Let's build a community. We had this a couple of years ago with the pandemic. People were gathering around each other, creating a community. So that's really, really important. So, but learning that we can empower ourselves to look at, we can make those changes, and we're never too old. I'm 56. And I'm excited about what's to come, and I'm still going, and I've worked on projects with the elderly. And, if you are aware that your mind is able to keep going and making changes, you're never too old. And that's the most important thing, to know that you can change your mindset. And when you're going through, which you might feel as a difficult situation, which I've been quite a lot like everybody else, is to be mindful to go, right, this is not long term. I'm going through this right now, and I will get through it. I mean, my son said something today. We had a massive hill, very large hill this morning. And I said, I'm not as fit as I normally am, Nathan. And he said, Mum, we can do this. He said, even though you're looking at the very top part of the hill and it looks so big, take one step at a time. And I laughed and I said, that's what I say to you normally and my clients. He said, one step at a time, just look down at one step at a time. Don't look back, keep going. And then every so often when you do turn around, you can see how far you've come. And we did it today. I was out of breath, but I did it. It was achievement. And that's how it's a better way of handling a situation. Take one day at a time. If you can't handle the whole day, take 1 hour, one half an hour, whatever. So yes, sorry, coming back to the question.
No, yeah, what I was just going to say, that one thing that we do, we think, oh, I've got to get it all done. I have to get it all done. I want to lose weight. I have to lose this 30 pounds immediately. And you're right. Take it a day at a time. Rick, is it Rick Hansen that says that negative thoughts are like Velcro and positive thoughts are like Teflon? I find that to be so true. That why is it then if you walk in someplace and somebody says, you look beautiful today, but then maybe somebody else says, or maybe 10 people told you that, then somebody else says, boy, you look really tired. What are you going to latch onto? You're tired.
Yeah.
And so we really need to shift that. And I always say I am a work in progress. I will always be a work in progress. It's like going to the gym, work in progress. But these are such helpful tools, and they're great for all of us to know. Anyway, yeah. So continue with some of your other experiences there.
Yeah. So then, in 2009, my lungs collapsed. I was diagnosed with a lifelong condition. And during that experience, I was rushed into hospital. But before that happened, I didn't believe in angels. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not religious at all, but, it's certain different types of energy and stuff. And I would have said before, it's where the brain is. The brain's not receiving oxygen, so you're creating an image, whatever. But I sensed it. And my daughter was downstairs and she ran upstairs. She said, what was that heavy sound? Because I heard a heavy bang. And I'd reached out and I sort of said, I need help. And I didn't believe in God or anything. And I'm not religious. Yeah. And I was like, I need some help. Someone help me. And then I heard this force by the side of me and I saw an image of an angel. And I still today and I go, oh, this is crazy. But my daughter came up, she didn't see the image, but I was aware that I was being looked after. So that was, the second time when it had happened, the ambulance had come, my heart stopped again. And it took me a long time to learn to breathe. I was on medication and I started having depression. And this is when I say, take each day as it comes, one step at a time, bite-sized chunks, because to get through that experience of trying to recover after that, after the lung had collapsed, I really did plummet. I had post-traumatic stress after the first accident. I know what it's like to have depression myself. And then there was the third time I was on an operating theatre table in the hospital. I walked down to the theatre. It was in 2018. I walked down to theatre and I saw the blue operating theatre. I was speaking to the nurses because I'd worked at the hospital as a consultant. I knew all of the team. I was laying down ready to have this procedure, an everyday procedure, nothing complicated at all. And the next minute I know, I was in a white space again. And I was like, oh no, I've done it again. And then this individual that stepped in, I remember them saying to me, they were really disapproving and really annoyed at me. They sort of, you have to go back. You haven't finished your job. And I felt as if I was at school being told off. And this individual kept on turning around going, I'm telling her. And then he'd come back again and say, you need to go back. Now, when I was coming back from that experience, my heart had stopped. And when I came back from the experience, all I heard was the bells going in the operating theatre. And I know I trained as a soul midwife, and they were saying about your ears, the hearing is the last sense to go. So it was the first sense to come in. And I heard the bells going off. I had someone then holding my hand. I was back in the blue room and I was talking to a nurse and I said, what happened? Then the anaesthetist came running over and she said, we thought we had lost you. And the nurse had said to me, your heart had stopped. So I'd gone off again. And I had a little bit more of a download. So that happened then. So it was 3 near-death experiences, but, I had a seizure Valentine's Day 2022, so not long ago. So it was a massive seizure, a brain bleed. So about 2.5 years ago now. I didn't have a near-death experience, but I was just taken out and I was told to rest, and the brain bleed. And I'd fallen downstairs, I broke my neck, and I had a concussion. But I'm still here to tell the tale.
And I'm looking at you. You look so healthy, so gorgeous, so young. And nobody would ever know that you went through all these experiences. But it seems to me that it was training ground for who you are today and how you're helping so many people. I feel like it was all meant to be.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I feel exactly the same. And each time that I've been sort of taken out from, for instance, like near-death experience or even the seizure that I had, it was literally sort of giving me more information, more downloads. Even the seizure, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, the whole of my right-hand side. My adult children had to look after me. I didn't know when I was hungry. I couldn't go to the toilet. I couldn't clothe myself. I had to relearn to talk, to walk again. And I knew about how the brain worked. So I knew that if I took up, taking up Italian, that would help with my brain rewiring. I took up yoga again. So I had to learn my position, a lot of balance. I took up roller skating, which I went back to roller skating, which I forgot I knew how to roller skate. I was determined, and that's the thing. There's a determination in me, and I'm not special. And I really have that belief in every single person that I see, or even if I don't see and I just hear a podcast or a YouTube clip, whatever it is, that I believe in every single person, and whatever is happening to you right now, you can overcome it. And these situations that happen to us, it's just shown us how strong we really are and what we are capable of doing. I don't feel it's punishment. I don't feel it's, stand still and stop. I just believe it's just developing our souls. And that's what I believe. That's what keeps me going.
So, I'd like to unpack that a little bit because, I know Joe Dispenza's story, and I think his healing story, which is really incredible and has helped so many people. And then your story. How do you have that tenacity and trust that you're going to get better? How do you not go down that neural pathway of, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't. What is it in you that sets it apart? Because we all need that. We all need that in us. And the word I'm seeing right now, the word trust is coming across my face right now. I'm seeing it. But can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I can. It's like, what a waste of time it would have been to put a human being on the planet and then I'm going to get wiped out by one near-death experience. What a waste of time for me to be placed here. And I believe that we're all here to make a difference, even if it means that, wherever I go, wherever it is, a supermarket, wherever it is. I mean, I worked at a hospital years ago and I was a consultant, and I used to train consultants to how to communicate with their patients. Some people are delivered a diagnosis and they just leave them with it, and that happened to me. And I remember working in this hospital and I said, we're a team. And the director said to me, I want you to train the cleaners on one day, the kitchen staff on another day, the doctors, the surgeons on another day. And I said, no. I said, we are a team. We all need to work together. Without the cleaners, we don't get a clean room for our patient. Without the cooks, the chefs, the wait staff, we don't feed our patients. We're all as important and we all play a vital role. And I believe every one of us on this planet plays a vital role to each other. I will say good morning to wherever I am. If they have a name tag on, I will recognize them because they're important, whatever role they play. And it's really important. Now, with me, what keeps me going, I believe that I'm here for a reason, and we are all here for a reason. Otherwise, what a waste of time of us being here. So if I can help just one person, then my job is done, and I will just keep going and keep going and keep going. There is a reason why I'm here and everybody else. So we have a choice. And for years, after my lung collapsed in 2009, I had agoraphobia. I couldn't leave my house for 2 years. And I had 2 children, and what was I going to do? And so in a way, by having the children, it motivated me to take one step at a time, one step out the front door. And that took a long time. Another step onto the driveway, another step to the end of the road. And I had to keep going. Today, when I climbed up that real high hill, my son has a Dachshund, like a sausage dog, and she's got the shortest legs ever. And I kept on saying to her name's Jody. And I said, Goji, if you can do this, I can do this. And it motivated me. I think we all have that innate ability to push ourselves, but it's like we have to look at our beliefs about ourselves. And if I'm here to help people, that's what motivates me, keeps me going.
Well, God, I just believe in that 150%. I remember I had like a light switch moment when both my parents passed away 4 months apart. And I was so sad. And I thought, how does the brain work? How do I get out of this kind of depression? And that's when I learned about neuroscience. Somebody was working with me and about neuroplasticity. Everything shifted at that moment. And it seems similar to you when something just, a neural pathway clicks in. And so now when I get anxious or I get stressed, it doesn't come in as forceful as it used to, and it doesn't last as long. And that, I know that's for everybody. And that's one reason I really wanted to do Fear Unzipped. I say it came through me, not from me. And this is where I think I'll say that I heard you for the first time on a very, very popular podcast. And I've heard hundreds of people. And when I heard you, I just thought, oh my gosh, I really like her. There was just an energetic connection. I just felt that. So I actually went to your website and I thought, well, I might do a reading with her, which I wasn't doing. I wasn't really doing those. And I saw you were booked out for 6 months, but there was one space.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's weird. How did I get this space? So I believe in all synchronicities. I believe in signs. I believe in it all. I think you do too. Yeah. And I got it. And you did a reading with me. And you said to me, Sandi, you're going to be doing a podcast. I can see it. You actually saw this whole thing. I don't know if you saw yourself on it. I did. Oh, did you? Okay. And that it was a healing space because this is a community space. I want people to know they're not alone because I don't care how successful, how attractive, how smart you are. I had a PR firm for 30 years with Hollywood clients in the entertainment industry. These people you'd look at and you go, they've got it so together. Every single person had anxiety and fear or just didn't feel good enough. So when you planted that seed about the podcast in me, something clicked in. And then whether it's my guide or whatever it was, my guides, everything started to gel. Even the name came in. Do you know the acronym for this is FU? Which I trademarked Fear Unzipped. I never even looked at the acronym and I thought, it's FU. Well, that's interesting. But so you're right. We're all tied together.
Yeah.
And no person is better than another, and no person is more gifted, especially when it comes to these metaphysical modalities. A lot of people say, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
She can do that. She's better at it. Can you talk a bit more about that? And I'd love to know about, what's the difference, do you think, between channeling and intuition? And how do we know we're doing it?
I love that. There was something you'd said a little bit earlier about trust, and I think that comes down to like the belief as well, believe in ourselves, but also for me and what I teach is literally about, I needed to have signs, you know, to our synchronicities and stuff. I needed to have something to prove to me that there was actually something there. And I think that's what happened on that day, that when my nan's voice had come in, and my nan, and I heard her and had the conversation with her, and then the angel and everything else, and that other individual, I could see it was, they were trying to reach out to me to say, you can trust us, we're here physically, you can see us. And I say this to my students, it's like, you have to ask for assistance. And sometimes, you know, as individuals, you know, I remember as a child sort of praying, please God, I mean, you know, I didn't know whether I believed in God or not. And again, I'm not religious, but I was like, please God, can we win the lottery? We need to eat, we need food, we need this. And nothing happened. And there's part of me is like, I don't believe in God because this didn't happen. I later learned, and like now I know that actually it would have been too easy if that had happened. I needed to go for everything that I went through. And I think this is what, well, I feel this is what happens individually when we go through something. We've got a choice. We can see it as an opportunity to grow and to expand. So I often say to my clients, my therapy clients, you know, my clients, if I'm doing a reading for as well, it's like, look at that and go, you know, when something comes up, what is this showing me about myself? What is it teaching me? What is the lesson for today? What is it that I need to learn about what's happening? You know, how can I grow from this experience instead of thinking, woe is me? And by keep growing, and then ask those signs. I often tell my students, you know, have a journal by your side, so that, you know, if you want to see a sign, whether it's a butterfly or a certain bird or a tune. I know my nan, she, you know, sometimes I shuffle the music on my phone, you know, and Apple tunes, and something that will come up, and I'm like, oh, I was just thinking of you, Nan, thank you. And it's about asking for those signs. And so it's very hard then when, you know, and when I teach my students, I say to them, you've shuffled it about 100 times, and you've got a message every single time, you know. Or when we're driving on the freeway, and then, you know, we're searching for an answer, and we turn the radio on, and then suddenly this tune comes on, it's given us the message, and we're like, I'm not sure if that's right or not. But when it keeps happening and happening and happening, so the idea is to build that up. It's like a muscle in us, you know. It's a muscle memory. It's a muscle of energy that when we start becoming aware of things around us, we start becoming aware of it, we can see it, we're priming ourselves to look out for it. A bit like the adverts that we have, you know, I used to work for a marketing company. We're primed to listen to certain wording, to buy certain products. Well, why not use it the other way around? Why don't we then start asking for signs from the universe, God, angels, whoever, and then start receiving them? So you can train yourself to become aware of when you are seeing those signs, and those are the signs that then help us to take us on that journey to start really believing that we can create the universe, the dimension, the destiny that we want. You know, there's no good people going up there saying, I want to do a manifesting workshop, and they're like, well, I want this guy to be like this, I want to have this car, I want to have this house, and not believing or feeling into it. And we create our own energy. So however we are feeling, we are sending it out like ripple effects out into the universe. So if we want change, we have to be the change first in us to attract it like for like. The universe will give it back to you like a magnet. So, but we have to start with ourselves so that we can start seeing the changes that are around us. If you're gonna, you know, this contagious. If we smile at one person, they normally smile back, and then they end up smiling at somebody else. It's the same thing. It's about this energy that we have. And so, you know, with our intuition and that gut feeling that we have, the more that we do those little exercises, we can start working with ourselves. So that the intuition is, you know, you'd ask me a question, you know, whether I thought it was my mind or our subconscious mind a little bit earlier. Now, if you feel that you're hearing information, not everyone is going to hear it. They might feel it, they might just sense it. But if you hear that inner voice and you're wondering whether it's your higher consciousness, your soul consciousness, your higher self, or your intuition, it will always be positive. It's your cheerleader that's trying to help guide you. So when it's the negativity and going, oh, you are fat when you look in the mirror, that's your subconscious mind. That's an old previous experience or something, emotional experience that's come from somewhere else. So that's the difference. And it's always going to be cheering you, moving you on. So that's your intuition. That's your psychic self. That's your psychic self when you're thinking of a friend, or, they phone you or they text you and you're like, oh, I was just thinking of you. Because the wavelengths, the frequency, the energy is matching up. Now, mediumship is slightly different. Mediumship is, and not everyone can be a medium. Mediumship is when I have a loved one that steps in, and I'm a physical trance medium. So, they can talk through me, or, if I'm sitting in a room and somebody's in the room, they might smell the tobacco smoke of their grandfather. It's different. Then I have them individually stepping through me. But everyone has that natural ability to work with their intuition and their psychic ability, and that guides you through life. That's that inner voice.
Listening to you, I'm just so excited, and it speaks to every cell in my body, because it's what I really believe. And I'm a huge believer in science, and I have guides that do talk to me, and actually the way they end every conversation is high five and higher, love is the answer always. And for 2 years, I thought, high five and higher, that's cute. Like, high five, that's cute. And then one day I was hiking and I thought, wait a minute, high five, they're talking about density. They're talking about raising our frequency. And then I heard this laughter of, yeah, she got it. She got it.
Yeah.
But they're all here to help us and not make our lives miserable. Yeah. And I do love that. When I think of intuition, it's almost like a whisper that comes through my mind and out, and I can forget it right away. Yeah. So it's that whisper, and I tell people, just grab onto that little whisper that comes through. So channeling is different. And when you go into channel, how did you first know that you could channel, and what did you feel when that happened?
Okay, so channeling can literally be that as a medium that you're having an individual stepping in. So, and it, people call it different things around the world, but channeling for me, how I see it, is that literally when I channel information from either light counsel or from a loved person that's passed through on the other side, I'm hearing the information. So I become, well, in the UK, we say tap. I think you say faucet in your country. I'm not sure, but like water coming through. So I am the conduit that I have the information that comes through me. So that's channeling, like a car going through a tunnel. That's what channeling is about. It's not my information. I wouldn't know the information. So it's not like something I've researched. So, when I'm channeling as a medium, that loved one on the other side is giving me information I wouldn't know. So that information is just coming forward through me, and I don't hold on to it. I just give it over to the individual, and I won't know. I won't remember the information. I won't know, I won't remember it. So that's why I record every session for my client. I go, well, you can keep the recording because it's not my information. It's like me being on the telephone, passing through the information. But there's also another type of channeling where I channel like counsel, or ascended masters. So ascended masters are those of gurus that we might see on the planet, those who are scholars, those who've learned loads of information while they've been here. Their physical body is no longer here because the physical body is matter and it decays, but their soul still continues and it becomes part of one, like part of the universe. And that's that love energy that we're talking about. That's that energy where, we can connect to when you're on a high frequency. And high frequency, we can attain that by doing things we enjoy, like we're saying about nature or whatever it is. Children are very connected and closely connected to that. So when you're channeling like light counsel are other beings like in the galaxy, in the universe, that come together, that want to help the planet, that want to be here to serve us. So that information is slightly different. And I didn't realize I could do that. I mean, I think it was literally during COVID that, I was told about creating a group for individuals, bringing people together, like-minded individuals to hold that space for a very difficult time, which I did create. And it was just literally during that period of time, I noticed there was a click in my jaw. My son was saying to me and my daughter, you're starting to sound different, Mum, because sometimes my voice changes. Yeah. And then I realized actually there was other individuals stepping forward. These weren't people that I knew. There weren't clients that I'd sat here and their mother or father had come through. There were other beings. And when I went into deep meditation, they took me back to the Akashic Records when I'd had my near-death experience. So I understood why I had that near-death experience. So they took me to that place. That was also where Light Council was, where there's all this universal energy. So when I channel that, there is a greater force than myself that comes forward and passes on information.
Can you call them in at any time? Or do they tap into you and say, I have something to say? Or can you just call them in?
So, I can call them in. I work with an ascended master, Zachariah, who has been here before. Zachariah is an ascended master, part of Light Council. But Zachariah, when that individual comes in, he has been teaching on the planet he goes right the way back. He taught Jesus. And so he teaches me, I'm aware of that energy. He's one of many. And then Light Council, when I sit in trance, they then come forward and come through, and then I can feel them. So it just depends. I mean, I have communicated with them before you today, and I have asked them if they would step forward. I don't know if they will or not, but I can always try if you want me to.
We would be honored to have them here. Absolutely.
Okay. So if we've got time, then I'll have a go and then see where we go from that. Okay, let's have a little go. Welcome. We are intrigued that you wish to call upon us. We are intrigued and best pleased with you that you moved forward with this podcast. We are aware there has been some self-doubt in the early stages. But can you see you are part of the journey of helping others, humanity? Did you have a question as we are here?
Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit why we are so fearful as humans and why we experience so much anxiety?
We have been listening to your conversation with Anne. And we're aware that you are aware of your physical matter, your organic matter, your physical bodies needed to have a sense of protection. If you imagine, if you placed your hand into the fire, we have said this many times before, that if you had no recollection, no memory of that experience, that if the human placed their hand back into the fire, it burns, gets hot, there is pain. You do not recreate, you do not rebuild the hand, and it is then not working the way it should have worked before it was burnt. And so it is there as a sense of protection to protect yourselves of those emotional memories. But there has been much fear on your planet over the number of years that your planet has been created. There has been many wars. So it makes sense that there is a sense within your physical forms, within your brain matter and the memories to remember those experiences. There is a lack of processing, though, in a sense of the humans fearing that they must remain small and they are abandoned. There are many on your planet that feel as if they are suffering. They do not see what we see as a whole, that the experiences are just there to expand their physical and emotional growth. Have we answered your question?
Yes, definitely. And do you feel that we're moving more in a direction of compassion and humanity now, that we're maybe stepping out of the fearfulness a little bit? Is it getting better for us?
Only for those that are wiser, and there will always be those that choose not to hear it, it's like the three wise monkeys that you have on your planet: hear, see, feel, speak, evil. Now, it is those who become aware that they are more than the physical self, those who are aware that they are higher frequency. This can be attained by many ways and many methods. You spoke of dimensions earlier. It is those who sit with meditation and those who struggle with meditation and say that they cannot achieve this goal. We only say through meditation is a sense that it quiets the busy mind, because the mind becomes quite complicated for individuals as they are in the past and the present and the future. They worry about if they have lack of something. They worry about something that may come. They are never in the particular moment. It is to be in the present moment of the self, to be experiencing the present joy of their experience. And yes, we are aware there are other present feelings, emotions they may feel too. Fearful, scared. We are aware of this. But they have to be aware that it will not last forever. It is about the period of growth and expansion of themselves, and to believe themselves that they can expand and they can learn. It is very much about the dimension of the self and how they see themselves. And dimensions is just about space and time. If you look back at a past memory, you stay stuck in that dimension of time. It could have happened as you were a child. On your planet, you have been very good at looking back at the sad times and staying in that present moment. There are many who are locked in that inner child of fear and worry and are too fearful to step forward. But they can achieve this enlightenment by moving forward, by knowing that they can expand themselves and grow, even by just shifting their mindset. Your mind can keep you stuck in any dimension that you wish to travel in. Now, dimensions, as we are making you aware of, they can also be times and spaces, as in with dreams. Many loved ones step forward in different dimensions of times and space. Those who have lost a loved one can have a dream that the individual loved one steps forward to be by their side, to speak, to communicate. It is only the mind, once they wake up, do they feel that this is nonsense or a memory, or feel that, yes, it would be nice, but then they're aware that that loved one has passed over. It is where you wish to seek your awareness, or where you wish to focus your attention upon. But how wonderful the brain is, how it can move backwards and forwards in time. Many fear this. Did we answer your question?
Definitely answered the question. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are honored that you came in. Is there anything else that you feel you'd like to share before you go?
We would like to say that how wonderful the brain is, because if the brain moves backwards and forwards in time and space, different dimensions, how wonderful the brain is, then that they can work upon this, that they can shift their mindset, that if they know that they are in fear, how wonderful they can click it over to be in joy. It is that they have total control over this, but they must be aware of the empowerment of themselves. By those who are shifting their frequency or becoming more enlightened, and those who are becoming aware that there are other things in life and not just what they see, but other energies, they are the ones that will move through time and space and faster, and they will raise the frequency on your planet. You see, every single individual, when their frequency begins to raise, it changes your planet.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Are you back with us, Anne?
Oh my God, they used to step back and I could just feel them stepping back.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for bringing them forward. I think we're coming to the close here, but boy, I could talk to you, like I said, for hours and hours. You have to come back. So that's going to have to happen. But can I ask you, if you thought of one strategy that you could leave listeners with if they're going through kind of a stressful, like mental stress, what is that thing that they can do today that can make them feel better pretty quickly?
Yeah, that's so important. I feel that having that belief that this won't last forever, and that's what kept me going when I had depression, knowing that it won't last forever and that it's going to change again. That's the most important thing. And to take things into bite-sized chunks, not to overthink too far ahead. And I know, as I said, I've been extremely poor, and then I had money and then lost everything. And, I was homeless for a while. And I think what really kept me going is that belief that it was more than myself. There was more out there in the universe, and that's what's really giving me the strength. And I've just being aware of there is more to me, there's more than this in the world, and feeling really connected to love again and the universe. There's just tiny little tips, just look at your day, enjoy whatever it is. Even if it is, I had a piece of toast this morning with loads of butter on, and I was like, oh, this is so lovely, yummy, without thinking, oh, I'm going to put loads of calories. And I was like, my body was enjoying it, because our body keeps the score of our emotions, and that's so important.
That's really so true. And somebody said, when you walk in the room, your energy walks in first. So
that's
we need to keep. So my final question, Anne, is, if you were to answer this question, it's, in the past I was, and now I am.
In the past, I was so fearful and so scared of even my own shadow, and didn't believe I could accomplish anything. And now I am powerful, and now I am powerful. I'm a woman in my own right. I've just bought my own house. I'm excited about the future. So if I can do this, so can anybody else.
Well, wow. And thank you so much. My heart to your heart, I am so appreciative for you being here, and look forward to talking to you again. And thank you for taking the time and helping us navigate this fearful space that we can be in sometimes. We're unzipping fear.
Yeah, you really are. And you just got to go for it. And I love the fact that you're doing this. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing as well, because it's going to help so many people.
Thanks, Anne. Take care, and we'll be in touch for sure. Thank you. Kisses to you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.